See you, honorable judges and respected opposition team. Today, as the government side, we strongly stand with the motion this house would make museum for free for everyone. And now I will move into my arguments. My argument is that museums can be a way of education, history, and culture for a lifetime. What do I mean by this? We often think that we learning ends when we graduate from school, but the true education never ends. As long as we live, we continue to learn about ourselves, about the society, and about the world, and about others. And one of the best places to learn education is the museum. Museums are not just for everyone. It's just not just for children or students. It's for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're old or if you're young or old or rich or poor. However, museum and they offer a chance for people to keep their curiosity alive, to stay mentally active, and to grow in understanding throughout the entire life. However, when museum entrance and charge entrance with money, not everyone can enjoy this opportunity because some may think that it is gonna be a small money, but for the poor people who doesn't have much money, will be like, oh, it's hard for us to buy and learn the education and things like that because the museum needs the money for us to watch the stuffs inside there. So that living in a small prison pensions, even if a few dollars can be a barrier for the poor ones. That means life learning becomes a privilege instead of right. If we truly believe that education should be available to everyone, then museums as centers of information learning should also be free, because learning should never stop and assess for the society and things like that. Now you may ask, but if museums are free, how does it help the whole country? That answer is simple. An educated nation is a strong nation. When more citizens visit museums, they gain knowledge about history, science, art, and culture. They become more informed, more thoughtful, and more creative. These people can make better decisions in daily life, and they also contribute the economy through invention, cultural development, and community building. In fact, when government invests in free museums, it is not losing money, it is investing human capital. Every visitor who learns something new will get inspired, or who teaches their child what they saw becomes a more valuable citizen. The return on that investment comes from from of smarter people, stronger communities, and a more united nation. Finally, let's remember this: buildings and money can be lost, but knowledge stays forever.
We strongly believe that while museums are extremely valuable for learning and culture, making them completely free is neither sustainable, effective, or fair in the long term. We believe that accessibility can be improved, but not through complete removal of entry fees that are essential for quality and education. Now, starting off with my first rebuttal, they stated that museums are a way of education, history, and culture for a lifetime. Yes, we know that museums are a lifelong source of education and history and culture, and that's exactly why we must protect their quality and sustainability, not make them free and financially unstable. Proposition's argument assumes that just removing the price tag magically increases learning, but education doesn't happen simply by walking in for free. It happens through well-maintained exhibits, guided tours, new collections, and interactive learning programs. All of those things cost money. If you remove entrance fees, museums lose a major source of funding, meaning fewer resources to create educational programs, less ability to update exhibits, and lower quality of staff and guides. So in Proposition's world, museums may still exist, but they become empty shells. They become outdated, underfunded, and less educational. Now, my second rebuttal, they stated that not everyone can enjoy opportunity when it costs money to enter. And we understand that concern, but this argument oversimplifies the problem and ignores how real museum systems already work today. First, most museums already have discounts or free days for students, children, and low-income families. That means people who truly need financial help already get access anyways. We don't need to make it free for everyone, including the rich people, which would waste resources that could go into improving exhibits or education. Opportunity is not just about entry, it's about the experience that you get. Now, starting off with my first argument about financial sustainability and independence. Museums are not just buildings, they are living institutions that require constant care. They are places that hold priceless pieces of history, dinosaur fossils, ancient artifacts, scientific exhibits, and
POI.
artworks. These are not ordinary objects. They require special cleaning, temperature control, security, and other acts of care. All of these things cost money. Most museums use entry fees as a steady
POI.
source of income to fund these operations. If we make museums completely free, they lose one of the most stable and predictable sources of funding. Then what happens? They become dependent on government funding, which can change with every political term or budget crisis. They can't afford to repair or preserve old collections, meaning that in a few years, these treasures may decay or be permanently damaged. That means the very purpose of a museum, which is to protect and educate people about our past, is destroyed. Some people believe that education should be free, but education absolutely cannot exist without the funding. If museums collapse due to poor maintenance or lack of staff, free entry means nothing. Now, this principle is important compared to their side because our side ensures that museums survive for future generations. Proposition offers short-term happiness, but we offer long-term protection of our shared culture. Now, my second argument is paying creates respect, value, and responsible visitors. Museums are not theme parks, they are spaces of knowledge and reflection. The info size itself emphasizes how museums teach people about culture, science, and art. To preserve that seriousness, visitors must treat these places with respect and intention. When something is completely free, people tend to take it for granted. If everyone can enter without paying, three things happen. One, overcrowding. Museums become too crowded, making it hard for serious learners to enjoy or reflect. Secondly, disrespect. Visitors may come just for photos or to pass time, not to actually learn. Third, damage and cost. Artifacts, fossils, and paintings are more likely to be damaged when visitor control decreases, and cleaning or repairing them is expensive. A small entry fee creates a small barrier. People who come are genuinely interested in culture and learning, not just entertainment. Now you get three massive harms in opposition. Museums lose quality, preservation, and cultural protection. They lose the most consistent and reliable funding source. Secondly, they depend on government for funding. That's dangerous because government budgets are unpredictable, especially in times of crisis. Third, overcrowding, disrespect, and loss of learning environment. Making museums free will not attract just learners, but anyone looking for entertainment, shelter, or a place to hang out. At the end of this debate, we are reminded what museums are truly are. The guardians of our past, the classrooms of our present, and the inspiration for our future. But without funds, they cannot protect those treasures. Without respect, they lose their meaning. Free access sounds noble, but it endangers everything museums stand for. With all that I've stated, so proud to oppose. Thank you.
As a deputy prime minister, I will start by uh, rebutting what they said. Uh, she said that it's going to be a kind of a waste of money because if rich person who are able to afford museums actually go there, then it wouldn't really, it would be a waste of money. But we don't think so because when the museum is run by for free, it comes from people's taxes. And who pays more taxes? Rich people actually sometimes pays more taxes than the poor people. So why shouldn't they have the right to actually enter a public service? And you said that it wouldn't be maintained. But look at libraries. Libraries are by the government. If you read a book, it doesn't cost you, but it's still maintained. And you also talked about it's not going to be clean, it's going to be overcrowded, but museums are not supposed to be about very being clean or something like that. It's about educating people. But by making museums maybe a little bit more expensive, it could make the citizens who are in the lower parts of the areas not come to the museums, because some people actually scramble to live and actually spend $1 or $2 to actually eat food, but so they won't be really educated. And you said they're going to be overcrowded and it's going to be not for education but just to pass time. But I think this is a good thing, because overcrowding means it's going to be more popular. So the citizens will actually learn more about the country they live in. And you said about passing time, where I think this is actually positive, because rather than spending on social media and looking at fun stuff, I think it's actually beneficial for persons and citizens to actually look at museums and think, oh, this is a fun fact. Oh, this is quite good. I think it's better for past time spending. And I will move on to my argument on why it should be free. I think education system should be free. When we go to school and finish college, we don't really have an opportunity or a place to actually study, rather than libraries. And there's
Right.
only, yes.
If you remove all entry fees, who do you think is gonna pay to preserve the artifacts and maintain the museums properly?
Okay, so there's actually a lot of ways they can earn money. First, they can help by getting a fundraiser. There has been a lot of times where the citizens will actually pay for the maintenance to actually be sustained. And secondly, it comes from people's taxes. How do you think libraries are being sustained? It doesn't just come out of air. This education system is a public service, so it comes from our monies. Yes, and I will uh, move on to my next point. Museums can inspire. When we grow up, we start to lose touch on creative things. But by looking at museums, we can actually learn more and learn a lot of perspective. Like, oh, this person thought like that. Oh, this person thought differently. And we can learn actually a lot of perspectives, and we can grow our mental. We can grow mentally. And it can actually let us find our dreams. When we are a child, we are only in the internet. We are only exposed to like silly stuff or funny stuff. But when we go to museums, you can actually see what a person actually made, and art and stuff like that. And I could actually think, oh, that I like looking at arts. Maybe I want to be a painter, or oh, I like this invention. I want to invent something. It can actually inspire and create dreams. And this is the reason why we think that museums should be free, so we can inspire and a lot of citizens, and it can actually educate the citizens than right now. Thank you.
Picture a world where the doors of every museum swing open for free, and inside you find not wonder but halls stretched thin, artifacts neglected, and learning treated like a bargain bin giveaway. We stand in opposition because culture isn't protected by throwing open the gates. It's protected by actually giving value to it. Directly moving on to my first clash then, they had the moral that learning should not have to come from pain, but the idea of that ignores the simple truth that learning is only possible when the spaces that teach us can survive. Museums aren't YouTube videos that run on pixels and goodwill. They protect rare fossils, ancient manuscripts, fragile paintings, and scientific wonders that took decades to uncover. And keeping those alive costs money every single day. By insisting that learning must always be free, the proposition creates a world where museums can no longer maintain the very materials that people want to learn from, and that's not moral. It's self-defeating. Proposition's moral stance also falls apart because it pretends that entry fees equals equal access, but it doesn't. Free entry If free entry leads to overcrowded halls, broken exhibits, fewer educators, and stripped down programs, then the students who need structure the most get the least. A world where learning spaces decay in the name of free access is not moral, it's performative. Real fairness comes from protecting quality, not pretending that removing a small fee magically removes inequality. They also had a point where the museum should be free for everyone, but saying that is easy, but making them free for everyone doesn't actually achieve that, because when museums lose funding, the first things to disappear are the ramps, sensory-friendly programs, school outreach, and community events. And these are the tools that actually bring in people who don't usually step through museum doors, right? So, second clash then, they asked the question, how would poor people get education if the entry fees weren't free, right? The proposition claims poor people can't learn unless museums are free, but that assumes that the only barrier is the ticket price, right? But however, in reality, poor students rely the most on structured programs, trained guides, and well-kept exhibits because those give them the support that they don't always get in schools. We have to also take note, panels, that museums are also not the only core way of learning. There's so many other ways to get an education, right? But when museums lose funding, those are the first pieces to collapse. So their policy doesn't lift up poor people up. It removes the very tools that help them learn in the first place. They also said that overcrowding is a good thing, but calling overcrowding a good thing and flipping this negative word treats museums like a theme park instead of actual learning spaces. When halls flood with people, visitors don't get discovery, and they get noise, rush, and block views. Fragile artifacts face more risk, educators can't run proper programs, and students can't focus long enough to understand anything, right? Moving on to my new pieces of substantive about the erosion of educational quality. Firstly, note that the key stakeholder for the substantive is the students, right? And once museums become free for everyone, they lose a key stream of funding that keeps the learning alive inside those walls. Without stable revenue, museums can't maintain expert-led programs, school workshops, or guided tours, and what starts as a feel-good policy ends up flattening the learning experience into something passive and shallow. Museums stop being classrooms of wonder and become crowded photo ops. In a world where young people already struggle with attention and depth, killing the quality of museum education hurts the very communities that this policy claims to help. 3 layers then. First is my mechanism. Entry fees are one of the most stable, predictable revenue streams museums will rely on, and when that disappears, they can't fund maintenance, curation, or train educators. This means that core learning programs shrink because they're the first most expensive to run. Second, the impact on learners, right? Without proper education, these well-kept exhibits students move from rich, interactive learning to surface-level wandering. The quality of understanding drops, especially for kids who rely on structured guidance to make sense of complex history, science, or art to learn. And lastly, about the long-term harm. As educational value drops, schools and communities stop viewing museums as serious learning partners, and over time, this pushes museums toward being entertainment venues instead of knowledge centers, breaking the long-term cultural and educational role that they were built to play. And our extension will stand firm because it shows the quiet truth that proposition keeps dodging about learning depends on depth, not just entry. A museum without funding turns into a thin shell where crowds drift around cracked exhibits and staff shrink to the bare minimum. And with everything that I've stated, this is why I am so proud to oppose. Thank you.
As the government whip, I would first like to debunk what the opposition side have said. One of their main points is that if museums didn't have fees, then they wouldn't be able to sustain themselves, and that'll cause problems because if they can't sustain themselves properly, the quality will drop and everything will drop together. But entrance fee of museums aren't the only way that museums sustain themselves. See, museums are a way of education, right? And ways of education like libraries and schools, they are funded by the government. Why shouldn't the museums be funded by the government too? Since it is a local place that we should all use, we should all be provided with, the government should pay for it because it's not just for useless things, it's for education of the people. And education is important because, well, if we have education from the museums, we can build many perspectives and we can respect other history and cultures. Yes?
If government funding is already stretched, why would museums magically become like a top priority when schools and hospitals are also still struggling? Like, what makes you think that they will pay for museums first?
They won't pay for them first. They will just pay for all of them. I don't really know what you're talking about in that point. Anyways, I would move on to what I was saying. And if you learn history and cultures of different countries by education, then you can learn more perspectives and you can make a more peaceful and understanding world. So for society, we shouldn't we should make museum fees gone. We should make them gone. And they also talked about a value that, well, they'll decay, but who told you? Now, like, why would they decay? Like I said, they wouldn't decay when they get funding, and donations also exist. People donate to education services all the time. So why wouldn't they do it to museums? Exactly, they would. And I would like to move on to another argument that as the government side have. I mentioned it while debunking one of the opposition side's arguments, but I will say it in longer terms, and it's that we can have a better understanding of the people in different countries, different areas, if museums are free. If museums are free, then we can have more perspectives on how we see it. We can learn because we can all go in there and see what they think, what the others think, like our second speaker has mentioned, and we can grow how to see the world better, how to see society better. And if that happens, then we will have better people that can work for our future, that can think in many different ways and think of the best ways that we can fix other problems. And we'll have a society, a world with more people with better education and people that can make wiser decisions. So for our world, for our society, for us to have better people, educated people, we should make museums free. Thank you. I will end my speech.
Fees are essential for museums to maintain their collection, pay the staff, and organize exhibitions. Without this income, many museums will struggle or reduce the quality of their displays. Paid entry ensures that customers who truly value the experience, unlike free entries that don't guarantee interest or respect that can lead to overcrowding and even damage the collection. Instead, we should focus on other solutions like discount day school trips, student passes that can increase also accessibility while still keeping museums sustainable and also preserving the cultural heritage. Directly moving on to my first clash. Side proposition said that free entry lets people who are also adults keep learning and curious, even after education, and poor people also need to learn. But many people simply don't visit museums because they lack interest. They're far away or they're just unfamiliar with the display. Making the entry free does not automatically create curiosity or motivate people to entering the museum. Simply removing the ticket cost does not address the deeper barriers to access, such as awareness, transportation, or personal interest. So free entry alone is unlikely to significantly increase public engagement. A more practical approach is to focus on targeted solutions like subsidized school trips or occasional discounted days, as these methods help those who truly face financial barriers while still allowing museums to maintain funding for staff, maintenance, and exhibitions. And like my first speaker has said, removing entry fees could ultimately lead to overcrowding, reduced quality, or even closures, which would ultimately reduce the meaningful access for everyone. Secondly, side proposition says that museums serve as an institution for education, and if education should be free, museums should also be free. But museums do play an important role, and education does not always have to be free to be effective. Similarly, schools, universities, and other learning institutions charge fees, yet they still provide valuable knowledge, and charging entry helps museums maintain high-quality exhibitions, employ trained staff, and preserve rare or fragile artifacts, which is essential for meaningful learning. Making museums entry free could reduce their income, forcing cuts to programs, maintenance, or educational resources, and access without quality defeats the whole purpose of learning. So again, we should focus more on subsidized school trips, discounted days that allow education to remain accessible to those who actually need the financial help, while ensuring museums can continue to offer a rich and sustainable educational experience. Opposition also keeps emphasizing that libraries, like museums, are maintained by the government, so museums should also be able to be sustained with the support of a government. But they ignore the fact that libraries and museums serve completely different functions and they have very different costs. Libraries mainly provide books and digital resources, which can be maintained at a relatively low cost. And while museums do and while museums preserve delicate artifacts, fund exhibitions, hire specialized staff, and maintain climate-controlled environments to protect priceless collections, these ongoing expenses make it difficult for museums to rely entirely on government funding. Government support alone is often not enough to sustain museums at high standards, and entry fees provide essential income to maintain exhibitions, hire hire experts, and run educational programs without fees. Museums may have to reduce quality or even close again, which would harm public access and learning experience. Lastly, side opposition says that they would get this people on their side would get more perspective of other countries if museums are free and learning to see how to grow better. But sure, it sounds nice to say free museums helps us learn about other countries. But let's be real. Learning from other countries doesn't magically happen just because the entry ticket is free. Firstly, the main barrier is cross-cultural learning it isn't ticket prices. It's location, interest, and quality of curation. For all these reasons, so proud to oppose. Thank you.
The clash in this debate isn't fuzzy or close. It is a clean break. Our case protects real learning, real access, and real quality, while every one of Proposition's points collapses into slogans that can't even survive the moment you ask how museums actually stay alive. So firstly, moving on into strategic mistakes that Proposition has made is firstly, they relied on the claim that the government will pay, but they never actually proved where that money comes from or how museums will stay protected when budgets tighten. Their whole model rests on a funding promise that they cannot even defend. And secondly, they argued free entry makes education more inclusive, yet they never showed how it maintains quality, and they ignored our evidence that their plan weakens programs preservation and long-term learning, leaving their case built on slogans instead of an actual sustainable system. Directly into my clashes then. My first clash that we posit that about financial sustainability and independence, but they told you that free entry fees is crucial for education. However, our side defends the foundation that all their goals depend on. Financial sustainability and independence are what keeps museums standing, staffed, and trustworthy. And without stable funding, there is no preservation, no programs, no expert educators, and their focus on education becomes empty if the institution delivering that education collapses, right? So they argued that museums are crucial for education, but they never proved how entry fees keeps that education strong. And we showed clearly that their model drains resources, lowers quality, and risks political independence. Meanwhile, our model keeps museums funded, unbiased, and capable of delivering high quality learning to every visitor. Second clash then, how we posit that it creates value and respect for education, but they told you that it's not inclusive for everyone. But our side clearly shows that paying a small fee builds respect for education by teaching people that knowledge has worth. When visitors see museums as valued learning spaces instead of free background noise, they engage more seriously, behave more responsibly, and treat exhibits with care, right? And the claim that they claim that it's not inclusive, but they never explain why targeted solutions like subsides, student discounts, free days, and community passes would not solve that problem more effectively. Removing fees for everyone wastes resources and lowers quality for the very people that they say that they want to help, like we said. So we win this clash because we protect the value of education while still allowing tailored access instead of choosing a blanket policy that harms sustainability, quality, and long-term respect for learning. And with everything that I've stated, this is why we have made it crystal clear why opposition should take this debate. Thank you.
You said that student discount will make it more possible because it will lower the cost, but it may be, for example, it's $10 for every entry and they do it half price. But still, a lot of the person who's in poverty won't really go to the museum because they actually survive by $1 or $2. They won't really have. Even if you do the discount, they won't really go to the museums. And you said, how would they be sustainable? Well, we find it's the same way because supporting hospitals and stuff like that are individuals, so it costs more money. But libraries and museums are for all the citizens, and for if you look at it like that, the government would, pour more money into the museums because it costs less and provide more people. And you also said the rich, if you pay more you gain more respect and you follow the rules or something. But I disagree with that, because the more money you have doesn't mean the more respect you will have for the museum. Even though you don't have any money, you could actually respect the museum more and follow the rules more. So I don't think that's a really good statement. And also say museums won't create creativity all the time, but museums have are the words and all the stuff are filled with creativity and our personal life of someone else. So not always, but in a lot of times, it will inspire those. While the opposition only focuses on the higher person who has a lot of money, we think that we're focused on the ones who are in poverty, who really don't have money to afford things. And we also consider them as a crucial part of the members of the nation. And this is why we think that the museums should be free for education and inspiration reasons. Thank you.